This is Rebel Therapist, a podcast for entrepreneurs who are trained as therapists and who want to level up their businesses, make a bigger impact, feel fulfilled, and be very well paid. I'm your host, Annie Schusler. Before I dive in, as this is being released, this is the last day to sign up for Create Your Program. Enrollment closes at the end of Tuesday, September 5th. And this is the last time we're running Create Your Program in 2023. CYP, Create Your Program, is the process where you take your incredible strengths as a therapist or a healer and you create your signature program. We go through a 10-week process together, step by step, so you're actually taking steps in your business during our time together with my support. Head over to rebeltherapist.me/create to enroll now. And if you're listening to this and it's too late, get on the wait list for next time over at rebeltherapist.me/create. I ran a free and open coaching call recently for everyone in our audience, including podcast listeners, clients, and email subscribers. And we got a record number of questions submitted, and I spent over an hour riffing on a bunch of those questions. We had such a great response from the attendees that I decided I wanted to share the entire call recording with you. You're going to hear my answers to questions including, has it been extra challenging to sell group programs lately? How do I figure out what my niche is going to be and what program I'm going to create? How much of a return on investment do you get from social media? Do I have to get my private practice stable before I start a program? And how do I carve out time for following through with creative ideas if I'm overwhelmed and exhausted by my caseload? Okay, here's the replay. I got so many questions from y'all, and so we're not going to be able to answer all of them. But what I'm going to do is just mix it up. I'm going to answer some questions from people who are current or former clients, and I'm going to answer some questions from folks who I haven't met before, just to have like a mix of all of that. All right. And I just got butterflies all of a sudden with like excitement and nervousness. And it's so wonderful to see new faces and see people who I already know and love. Okay. I'm just going to start. So this question came in. I priced my program that I created in 2021 pretty high, around $3,500 for an 8-week program. And this was a one-on-one program. And I secured one client a few months after launching, and they paid me in full. I loved the work I did with them, but since then, crickets. Granted, I haven't done much in the way of marketing the program other than appearing on podcasts and writing a monthly newsletter that I actually paused for the first half of this year. But my question has to do with your experience regarding how much therapists are willing to invest these days in a coaching program and what it is in your experience that often allows a higher ticket program to sell, especially to therapists who need coaching. I think my audience is therapists who don't currently have, but are working towards being a successful private pay practice, building a successful private pay practice. And my concern is that most of this niche doesn't have the funds to invest this much in my program. I've often considered offering a sale for a limited time to a limited number of participants, but not sure how much I should lower the cost for it to be worth it. I feel really good about my program, and that if a client were to say yes to my program today, I'd be ready to roll, especially because I already tested it with one client 2 years ago. Okay, so a lot of thoughts here. And with this question and all the questions, we're just going to play with the question a little bit. I'm not going to answer it exhaustively, but I just want to give the person some things to think about. I would question, of course, some people in every group do not have the money for a high-priced program and cannot afford it. And that is absolutely legit. And if we're looking at therapists in private practice, I wouldn't agree that on the whole, this part of most of this niche doesn't have the funds to invest much in my program. I wouldn't agree with that because what you're offering, it sounds like, is a solution partly to a financial problem. And so if you're communicating to someone, if you don't have a full private practice that is working for you, I can help you to fill your practice and have a practice that's working for you. There are a lot of therapists, if they see this is going to be the right solution to that problem, are going to be able to pay $3,500, especially for like a one-on-one program, which it sounds like this is. There's a demand for one-on-one coaching for therapists building their private practices. There are a lot of group programs, and there are a lot of people who want a one-on-one program for that. And for some people, that's going to be the fit where they know I'll do the work if I have a one-on-one coach walking me through it. So I don't personally agree. And of course, I know this niche pretty well. I think there are therapists who can afford and would pay for that. So I don't think that's what the problem is in the crickets. I think the question asker is kind of answering the question here in not having done a lot in the way of marketing their program in a while. And just one thing is like, make sure in your marketing, in your messaging, in your conversations with people that you're making it clear that part of what your program will do is help them fill their practices. Make sure that that's communicated, and look at, sometimes we can spend a lot of time on marketing without doing the most important marketing work of like really getting into conversations with the people who serve the same people we do. So that would probably be, if you weren't going to do a lot in terms of marketing, that's probably something I would focus in on. All right. And I happen to know, I think that the person who asked this question is not here. So I can't be like asking any clarifying questions on this one, but I'll just put out that for them for now. Okay. I want to go to someone who's not a client. Okay, so this person says, I'm in the early stages of starting to brainstorm what comes next for me after private practice. I have 2 questions. How do I figure out what program to create / my niche? Additionally, as someone with ADHD and on the spectrum, what does it even look like for me to grow my business beyond one-on-one sessions? My brain is both chaotic, and I also struggle with believing people will want to learn from me / listen to my ideas. Such a good question. So in terms of figuring out what program you want to create / your niche, I have like 2 big things I think about with that. One is, what is really exciting to you? Like what topic is so exciting to you that you find yourself annoying your friends about it, trying to talk to people about it who maybe don't want to talk about it anymore. That was how I knew what I wanted to do with my business beyond private practice. And so whether it comes out as you wanting to talk about it more than, people want your help in your immediate circle, or whether it comes out by you just being so curious about this thing that you just feel like you could endlessly learn about it and it would be interesting to you, or you just have a feeling about this thing is what needs to be birthed. That's one of the huge, big things that I would use to help me decide like what the niche is going to be, what the program is going to be, is what is really fascinating to you, because it takes a ton of energy to create an offering, to create a business. And you're going to have to go back to the well several times to that energy in order to build this business and serve people and create the marketing and all of that. The other big part of choosing a niche is looking at what is going to be viable in terms of what are other people walking around right now looking for a solution to, and looking for a way to spend their money to solve. So that's a viable niche. And I really think we need a combination of those two big factors, that it's got to be really important to us personally, and it has to be something that people are not willing to pay for. I sometimes hear that. It's like, no, like looking for a way to pay for, like they're looking for a way to solve it and they're expecting to pay money to solve that problem. So having those two things is a niche. And in my work with people, we walk through a lot of those viable niche filters. Like one of them is called the cousin test. And so that's where it's not really a pass fail test. It's just sort of a way to look at your niche and see how viable it might be. You want to be able to tell someone, oh, this is who I help and this is what I help them with. And as you talk to people about it, you have at least some of them say, oh, that makes me think of a particular person. That makes me think of my cousin, or that makes me think of my neighbor. They need to hire you. Rather than nobody having anybody come to mind. Or what you also kind of don't want is for you're talking to someone about your niche and they say, oh, that sounds interesting. I bet everybody needs that. That would apply to everyone. That's like not a great sign, because if your niche passes the cousin test and it brings particular people to mind, that means it's going to be easier for particular people to raise their hand and, say, yes, I want to work with you. So that's just one of the filters. There are many, but hopefully that will get you, just thinking in the direction of how to choose your own niche. And then the second half of your question, which was so beautiful. As someone with ADHD and on the spectrum, what does it even look like for me to grow my business beyond one-on-one sessions? My brain is chaotic. And also I struggle with believing people will want to learn from me, listen to my ideas. And I feel like that's part of what I'm hearing there is, the overvaluing of neurotypical ways of communicating and being, and that your voice and your way of doing things and your way of even marketing and serving people is so needed. In terms of ADHD, Liz Adams, who is a former client, she did a podcast episode with me about creating a program for people with ADHD, and she has ADHD, and about how in that program, she really brought her way of thinking and moving through the world into her program, and her having ADHD and being able to help her clients also befriend their brains in a really creative, beautiful, unique program. I think that's just like one spot of inspiration for what you're talking about. And in any, as in marketing your business, like the people who I work with are service providers more than they are marketers, and they're service providers more than they're content creators. And so I would just say, as you're figuring out how you're going to market your business, it's so important to think about you've got limited time and limited resources for marketing because you're probably primarily a service provider. And so look at what are the marketing activities and ways of doing those activities that feel good to you, that energize you, and that let you be yourself, as opposed to trying to work against yourself. Okay, I'm going to go to another question. I recently launched my pilot program. It's a program to empower the bi community and promote authenticity. Sadly, halfway through my first pilot, I experienced a significant bereavement. I took time off and have returned to the program. However, I've struggled with going back to social media and my newsletter. I need some motivation to re-engage with being visible and promoting the program. I'm questioning whether to be transparent about why I've been absent and use my own experience to discuss and model self-care through the grieving process. Any advice on how to handle unplanned time off would be super helpful. Thank you. So the tension I'm thinking about here, like I think it's a gift to be transparent, to let people know as much as you feel comfortable sharing about what's going on. I also feel like our businesses are here for like the long haul. And so we have to have permission to pace ourselves, to take breaks, to change our plans, not do something that we were planning on doing. And yeah, bereavement would be one huge reason why that will happen. So I think that is a gift. Like give yourself the gift of, yeah, completely permission to come back in as slowly as you can and need to. And then my only question for you to ponder about how much to share is how vulnerable do you want to be right now? And if you feel like it would harm you in any way or put you at risk in any way in your own healing to be sharing it with your newsletter or social media or any of those places, then, then don't do it, or do it really in a way that just shares as much as you're absolutely comfortable sharing. And where even if you didn't get a loving reaction, which I bet you would, but let's say if somebody didn't give you a loving reaction, that it wouldn't feel devastating. So just, protecting your heart as you decide when and what to share. But other than that, I feel like your transparency is a gift to your community, which I think it sounds like in the way that you asked the question. Okay. And then advice on how to handle unplanned time off. I feel like for me, it's just been communicate about my boundaries, like communicate really clearly about like, this is how long I'm going to be gone. This is what to expect. Try not to apologize too much because life happens. And by just stating, this is what's happening, this is my boundary, you're also then giving people in your community permission to do the same and to know that their needs and self-care also comes first. And also giving yourself enough time. I feel like I've taken time off before because of life stuff and felt the urge to take as little time as possible and tell people, I'll be back as soon as possible. And why? Like maybe you have to, but if you don't have to, like really give yourself the time that you need to give yourself. And as you're coming back in, come in at the pace that you really feel is right for you. And thank you for that question. Okay. And one from a new person or someone I haven't worked with before. How do you start to brainstorm possible program ideas when you don't know where to start? How much do you need to know or have expertise in that area first? So I think the brainstorming part, I think having like just letting yourself know that you're open to ideas is helpful, and acknowledging to yourself that you're in the idea generation phase is helpful. And then letting the ideas come to you and like grabbing them when they show up and honoring them when they show up. And like when an idea shows up, whether you're on a walk or you're in the shower, it's hard to grab your phone if you're in the shower, but like whether it shows up in the middle of the night, like try to honor it, jot it down, give it space, and don't judge it. So I know I just told you about like, there's all these filters for your niche that you can run through, but don't do that first. Like first, let your idea percolate and honor it and listen to it. And if that means doing a bunch of writing or talking or thinking, let that happen. And then as the ideas are coming in, when it's time, then you can weed through them and figure out like what's actually going to work here. But I think the first phase is getting excited about the ideas. And then how much do you need to know or have expertise in that area first? Okay, so I feel like everybody who I work with probably needs to hear. So this would probably be a different answer if I was just talking to, I don't know who, not y'all, but my answer to this would be you probably don't need more expertise to be helping people. Probably don't. Like I'd have to know your personal situation, or you would have to think through. I'm not the judge of this, but you could think through your personal situation. Is there something that would be really helpful for you to study or to know next? And it's probably something that you'll be studying and learning as you go, rather than that you'll need to wait and get another certification or get another, training under your belt or get 5 more years experience before you can do the thing. That's just not what I see very often. I tend to work with people who doubt themselves and are extremely ethical. And therefore, I very never am in the position of saying, like, I don't think you're ready to help people with that yet. So how much do you need to know or have expertise in that area? Like whatever the outcome is that you are going to be offering people, you just need to know enough to very honestly help guide them toward that outcome. So this is from someone who has been a client. I can't figure out why folks are not signing up for my program. Is it the price point? Is it that the course curriculum described on the sales page is not appealing? How can I get feedback from my email subscribers or social media followers about what's stopping them from signing up? Okay. So those are good questions. So when you've created a program and people are not signing up at the rate that you had hoped, I think the first place we often look is like, oh, it's too expensive. And that's not usually it. If you've got a niche where you're solving a problem that some people are really looking for a solution to and are expecting to pay for, then it's not usually the price. The price may impact how many people come and at what pace, but that's usually the first place we think, I charge too much, but that's not usually it. And then you're saying, is the course curriculum described not appealing? What I would want to know, what I would ask yourself is like, how many people are seeing your sales page? Because your sales page might be incredible, but if you're not getting enough eyeballs on it, you might be expecting an unrealistic conversion rate. And the conversion rate would be like the number of people who look at your sales page compared to the number of people who actually sign up. And what you might need is more eyeballs on your sales page. The course curriculum that's described on a sales page, I would say it's absolutely important, but it's not the most important thing on your sales page. Like I think the most important stuff on your sales page is probably that messaging about like, this is you, this is what you're dealing with, this is how I help. And like, this is the outcome of this program for the right person. Like that messaging is usually the most important thing on your sales page. So I'd probably look at that. If you're finding, there's tons of people looking at my sales page and they are the right people, but they're not buying, then I would look at that part of your sales page. And then getting feedback from your email subscribers or social media followers, I would probably, depending on the size of your email list, like if you've got like, let's say over 100 people on your email list, especially, then I would really try to get feedback from your email subscribers more than your social media followers, because your email subscribers are much closer to investing with you and they're much more invested in what you're doing because they've done a harder thing by getting onto your email list than following you on social media. So they've invited you into their email box. So that's a bigger honor. So I would ask them for feedback and then also expect you're not going to get a ton of feedback from your email list. So you'll have a small percentage of people actually write back to your email, even if they're very engaged. Like we just tend to, for the email lists we're on, we tend to read some of the emails, but we don't tend to reply, even if there's a question. We just might smile at the question and say like, that's a great question. But we don't necessarily hit reply. So don't take that personally. But you could even reach out and have a very clear email saying, will you help me out with this? I have a question for you. I noticed that you're here and I'm trying to get a sense. And in fact, the cool thing about having a really small, if you have a small email list, is they're going to be even more likely to respond than if you had larger list. The next one, and I think you're going to be like, I know what she's going to say about this. Do I need to read the top books on the topic I want to create a group about and or know the current research? This is holding me back from creating something because I have a belief that I need to do a literature review on the topic first. Not necessarily. Like, you might really be coming at this topic from a different point of view than those top books or that research. If you're feeling like, yeah, this is just something I'm putting off for some reason, but like, I know what books I need to read and that's my next step, go for it. Like, read either the entire books or, read parts of the books until you get the gist of it, because you're probably already, you may not even need to read the whole book, but it might be, that the top books on your topic are just coming at the topic from such a different point of view that you kind of know what you need to know from those books. That's another possibility. I don't believe you have to do a literature review on the topic first. And I think that might be, some of our academic training saying that's a step. It might be more that rather than a literature review, the next steps are going to be talking to people who serve the same people who you want to serve in a new way, or just going into your memory bank of the dozens and dozens of people who you've already worked with in this particular way. So I would say not necessarily. And that comes back to that thing of you just knowing who I end up tending to work with. You probably don't need to wait to do anything to create this group. Just a guess. We'll get right back to this episode. I just wanted to pause for a moment to tell you about my offer for therapists and healers who want to expand beyond private practice and launch their own programs. You get to be in a group of driven and open-hearted folks like yourself, and you'll be launching your own pilot program. This all happens in my 10-week container, Create Your Program. Go to rebeltherapist.me/create to learn more. Okay, let's get back into the episode. The next one, what are your thoughts? And this is from a former client. What are your thoughts on using social media to promote your offers? Are you seeing an ROI, a return on investment? Also, what about your freebie? What do you find is working best for you right now? Okay, so for me personally, in my business, I don't use social media very much to promote my offers. And that's not where I see the biggest return on investment. I see a much bigger return on investment from my podcast and from getting in front of other people's audiences, like being a guest on other people's podcasts. And of course, referrals from people who already know me, and absolutely freebies. But then freebies, it's always like, well, how did you get the freebie in front of people? And so that's always like a little bit, could be many places. But what I always find is that like getting in front of other people's audiences who serve similar people is where I see the biggest return on investment. And like I did a podcast episode with Heidi Savell, who's a former client. And so we had a good discussion about how she actually does see a pretty big return on investment for her social media use. And she's really used TikTok and also Instagram and has tracked the return on investment from that. So I find for most people I work with, social media is not the place that they get the biggest return on investment. And there are exceptions to that though. So that's a good episode if you're feeling like, I think social media is a big spot for me. And like, there's a particular platform there, whether it's TikTok or Instagram or LinkedIn, where you feel like you want to run that experiment and you think that it might be a place of return on investment. You could absolutely do that and work on tracking it And so in that podcast episode with Heidi, you can hear how she was able to really look at when you're on social media. It's like you better bet you want to be bringing people over to your email list from there, because on social media isn't going to be the spot where you're converting very many people. Like very few people are likely to buy straight from social media. But if you can bring people from social media over to your email list, like with your freebie or an event or something else, then, or just your newsletter, talking about your newsletter, then like that's how you'll end up seeing the return on that investment. That's something Kelly Deals does, is she uses social media to just talk about her email list and get people over there. So not even using freebies, but just the email list itself. So what's working best for me right now? I would say my podcast and referrals and podcast guesting and like speaking to other people's audiences. Those are the biggest ones. And then like straight, like where somebody found me on Instagram or something like that, and they remember that that's where they first found me, and then they become my client. So rare. So rare. It's like not a big part of my business. And again, we're all different. So I'm not like a business strategist who believes like you should do what I do, because yeah, there's some things that I do that I think are applicable to most businesses like ours. And you're going to have different strengths, a different audience. You're starting perhaps at a different time than I did. There are a lot of different factors. So when I answer how I'm doing something in my business, it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm saying, and that's what you should do, and follow that blueprint only. And then someone asked, as someone who has not started private practice, what would be your advice in laying the ground to build a program? So there are two different ways that occur to me right away to do this. And one would be to start your program right away, like to have a non-therapy program, like a program that's not under your license, that's something different right away. If you absolutely know that that calls to you, that excites you, you want that part of your business from the beginning, and to then start your private practice. Most people, though, find that they want to go the other way because there's such a roadmap for starting a private practice. It tends to be easier and faster to start a private practice. You can really make good money. As many of you know, you can make good money in a private practice, and it can be like a nice foundation under you as you then start to create a program. So I don't believe that's the order you have to go in. That doesn't make any sense to me. I always do things in the quote unquote wrong order. So that doesn't make sense to me. But if what you want is a stable private practice and then a program in addition to that, then it could make sense to just have that steady income, build your reputation, and then you get to have that idea generation part of you working at the same time that we talked about earlier, where you're opening up to, what program it is that you're going to create, and you allow yourself to dream and play and gather information. And as you're building your private practice, have your antenna up for what that might be. So those are kind of two different approaches. Most of us, I think, do well. Is this true? I think many of us do well doing one thing at a time, like focusing hardcore on one thing at a time. But even as I say that, I feel like there's probably some of you who are going to chafe against that and say, I actually like to do two things at a time. And so that's okay too. All right. And this one from a client, I'm starting to receive responses from my email newsletter on ConvertKit. That's awesome. And feel like I'm getting some juice there. That's great, especially considering what we talked about earlier, that like most people who love your newsletter are still not going to write back. So the fact that you're getting responses is awesome. And readers are asking about topics from previous newsletters. So I'm trying to decide if I should add content from my ConvertKit emails to a blog on my website. Yes, 100%. I would absolutely start a blog on your website with either all of or the best ones or the ones that feel like the best resources. And that is going to be a great place for people who find your site to be able to dive in for longer and learn more. And it's also going to be great for your long-term search engine optimization to have that there. So yes, 100%, I would do that. It's also one of those things it doesn't have to be super time consuming. Like you've already done the work. And so you're leveraging that by using it in a second way. So yes to that. And then you said, I know I keep interrupting myself and answering part of the question. Okay. So you said, readers are asking about topics from previous newsletters. So I'm trying to decide if I should add content from my ConvertKit emails to a blog on my website and or Substack. I'm also feeling a book coming on. So I am using this content for an outline for a book as well, and think a publisher might want to see a following like on Substack. Any recommendations? Okay, so I don't know much about Substack, and I don't know much about publishing a book. So I'm out of my depth on those parts of it. So I would talk to or, dive into the free stuff at first of somebody who that's their area, and they're going to know like what your future self is going to thank you for having built up, whether it's Substack right now, or it's going to be about your social media following, or it's going to be about like what podcasts you've been a guest on, or all of the above, like just to help you prioritize which of those things is going to help you most with your book. Like I know having a social media following, having an email list, all of those things are helpful, but I don't know like to what degree. And so like where to advise you to put your energy, but that's really exciting. All right. And yes, I think also the search engine optimization help of putting the work you're already doing on your site is going to help with that, with those numbers as well, in terms of like website visitors. All right. Another one from a newer person. I'm thinking of creating a program that is based on some common factors that I notice people in therapy struggle with. My concern is that I'm often adapting things I've gotten from other systems or research. I want to use information and strategies that work, but I'm really confused about how I would make sure that I'm not infringing on copyrights or calling other people's ideas my own. Okay, so this is something so I am not a legal expert. And so I don't get into the legal part of this. There's a lawyer who comes and does a Q&A with my clients and answers questions like this quite a bit. And so I can't answer the legal part of it, but I'll just say in the practical, like business part of this, welcome to the everybody in terms of like you're using ideas that didn't come originally from you. That is just true of every single one of us all the time, like almost every single one of us all the time, in that like we are taking everything we've learned from our learning lineage, and then we are giving credit, and we are using our own voice and our own experience and our own identities as ways that it changes as it's coming through us, but like giving credit to who we've learned from and where those things came from is just, I think, what we're all doing as ethical business owners. So I just say that to say, yeah, there are going to be the legal parts that you'll figure out and cross the T's and dot the I's. And this is true of everyone. And you can give credit to that learning lineage at the same time as you then find that you are, in a sense, creating something new by the way that you're adapting and putting all of these things together and being you with your particular magic. All right. And then from a client, we've got, so as you know, I have a marketing plan. And while I was in your courses, I was able to start with some newsletters, blogs, and a small social media presence. Since then, I've had some life circumstances that have not allowed me to do much of that. I've been getting a couple of clients, yay, And I know that I really want to pick back up and build my audience at some point in the future. Does that happen for people sometimes where they disappear for a while and then come back? Is it something where I have to provide an explanation, or do I just jump back in and start offering resources? If I can only post on social media once in a while, okay, first I want to answer that part. I don't think you have to explain anything as you come back in. I know we talked earlier about someone who had a question about, like, what if I went through something big and so I'm needing to disappear? And we were talking about how, like, if you want to, then sharing transparently about that is wonderful. And at the same time, like, for whatever reason, if you're coming back in and you've got things to share, like if you've got resources to share, I don't think there's any apology necessary or even any explanation necessary. Like, if these weren't your clients who were suddenly like, where'd they go? In fact, this may not resonate with everybody, but this would be true for me. I'm bored by reading, I'm sorry, I've been away for a while. Unless there's something interesting about why they were away for a while. Like, I don't need that apology. I'm just there to read the email because I like this person's work and I want it now. I'm not thinking about, like, how long has it been? So I think just share the stuff again. And you could let people know, like, if there's something about, like, you were away and now you're back consistently. So you want to kind of like set that as an expectation. Great. But yeah, just jump back in, just start sharing again, and your people will be delighted. And then the next part here is, if I can only post on social media once in a while, like even once a month, is that okay? Or is it better to just not do it until I can do it full on? With social media, I think, like, let's say if we're talking about Instagram, like that's the platform I use. Yeah, I think just posting sporadically is fine. And I always recommend, like, if you're a person like me who doesn't use social media very much, make sure that you're leveraging the work you're doing elsewhere to post on social media, that you're not putting yourself out to, like, create something just for social media, because you probably won't, it just won't be worth it. So you're writing newsletters, turn those into Instagram posts, for example. And then you said, same with newsletters. I'm definitely not consistent with those right now. Would it be better to just send one out occasionally, or should I wait until I can be consistent? Yeah, I would say send them out inconsistently rather than not at all. And the more people hear from you, the better. So it may even just take a while to get into that rhythm. And if you're waiting until you have it perfectly down, then that's kind of like making it harder for yourself rather than like letting yourself figure out how to get more consistent over time. Yeah, because, like, think about, for the reader we always want to be thinking about our future participant as who we're most writing to. So for your future participant, it absolutely makes sense for them to hear from you once in a while and be reminded of you and your wonderful work, as opposed to, like, not hearing from you at all. And you're not alone. Like I said earlier, we are more service providers than we're content creators or marketers. And so I love this kind of question, which isn't about, like, what's the perfect way to do this, but it's like, with what I actually have to give right now, what's a good strategy? Okay. And then we got a question. I'm currently a coach and I'm starting school this fall to become a therapist. So I'm 3 years out from graduating and probably 5 years from being licensed. I'm wondering, what's the right time in this process to think about starting a group? And if you have any insights into the difference between a group coaching program and a group therapy program, that is also a big question I have going into all of this. Okay. So, I mean, this is cool. This is such a good example of why it doesn't work to say the right order to do things is you build your private practice and then you can add something else on top. It's like, no, you've already been having the other thing, and now you're going to add therapy over time. So you could start a group as soon as you have hit critical mass in terms of how many people are raising their hand to work with you. So for most people, a really beautiful path in your work beyond private practice is to start with a structured one-on-one niched program, even if what you want is to end up with a group. Because if you're starting with a one-on-one program, then you can start serving people right away in this new way, and you can start making money in this new way. And then you have something that you can turn into a group rather than waiting until you've built a big enough audience to start a group. So you might be ready to start a group now if you've got enough people raising their hand for your coaching that you can put them in a group together. Then you're ready today. And you can start your group in 2 weeks or in 1 month or however long it takes you to just, do the back end stuff. But if it's time to build your audience more, then as soon as you have enough one-on-one folks that you're hitting critical mass where you're like, oh, there's enough of these folks that I could potentially turn this into a group program and run it that way. So that would be like my top level answer without knowing a lot about it. But that's really cool that you're going to be able to continue using your coaching business and that can be your foundation. And so you won't be a martyred therapist. I love it. So this is juicy. This is good. Are you noticing a trend that it's more challenging to get participants to sign up for groups right now? Any hypothesis why that might be, in your opinion? Yes, thank you. So I have anecdotally, and it's only anecdotal because I'm just not a researcher about this stuff. So I don't have research to share. But anecdotally, I have seen this be true. Like in the spring, my own program didn't fill in the spring, and it had been like filling over and over again before that. And then when I talked to all of my entrepreneur friends, they were having the same experience. So that is anecdotally strong in that direction. That so like people were filling their programs like half as much, sometimes only a third as much, sometimes much better than that. But that was like happening for really good, robust businesses. So, the theory that I sometimes have about it is for niches who are more price sensitive, which I would say like therapists are relatively price sensitive. Doesn't mean that therapists don't pay for stuff, but can be price sensitive. The economy was scary to people. So that's like one easy theory. I have noticed a lot of my clients and colleagues, like things are filling back up again, but I don't know. I don't know why. That's just what I'm noticing. And I'm noticing that there's a lot of my own bias in this, but I do feel like self-led courses with like no interaction with the facilitator, and this is going to feel like a bummer to some people and a relief to other people. Like, I think those are getting harder and harder to sell because I just think so many of us have had the experience too many times of not completing those or not getting what we wanted out of them, even if the content itself was beautiful. And so that isn't really what this question asker asked, but I just like to always think in a kind of, well, what's the possibility here? And I kind of think the possibility here is that we make our programs even better and like more interactive, more engaging, and like more the kinds of programs that the world needs. And I think that is what y'all kind of naturally do anyway, is that you're not really in this to just like go passive and make a buck. And I think that the era where that works is kind of over, maybe. And I don't think that's bad news for any of you, because I think like the people who are really in this because of love and service it's going to actually ultimately be good for us. That's my long-term thinking about it. Okay. So yeah, I'll be curious. I'm always watching that and seeing, but I feel like there's a dip back up for people with quality programs. All right. Next question. And I'll probably just do two more because I'm just, even as much as like I get really jazzed by this, I know my body's going to give out, my voice is going to give out in a few minutes. So I just need to be realistic with myself. I was like, I can do this for 2 hours. It's like, yeah, but not all at once. Probably not a good idea. Actually, before I go to the next question, anybody who's here and has been just like so lovingly and patiently here have a question that you want to bring?
Well, since nobody's speaking up, I'm going to just say I'm a teacher, not a therapist, except I have things sort of energy kind of psychology, Reiki master, and I do energy psychology. And I found my way to you through Barry Tesler.
Wonderful.
So I kind of do money, career, and metaphysics.
Mm-hmm.
So, my master's is in human resources development and personal financial planning. So I've got those things, but I'm not a therapist. So I'm really looking to get off the fence and build a meaningful program that really engages people and integrates my strengths.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, not everybody here is a therapist. And there was another non-therapist here just a little while ago. And I think if anything, that's going to help you. No offense to us who are therapists or former therapists, but you don't have, I know this wasn't a question you asked, but I just want to say this anyway, is like, you don't necessarily have a particular box that you now have to bust out of in order to create what you want to create next. But do you have a question you want me to riff on at all?
Not really. I just love being here and being with the folks who are here. And I recognize that part of being a teacher is learning. And so that's really why I'm here.
Thank you for being here. I love having you here.
Annie?
Yes.
I just was wondering, do you have an opinion about Facebook ads? Because you mentioned eyeballs on your sales page. Well, I have close to zero. And I'm just starting. I've been a therapist for 31 years, but I'm just starting a coaching business.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think? I read conflicting things. What do you think about Facebook ads?
So I think the time for Facebook ads is when what you're selling is working organically. And organically, for people who don't know, all that means is not paid advertising. So organic traffic means people are getting to your website some way besides paid advertising. So a really good time to invest in like meta ads, Facebook, Instagram ads, is when you're finding people who find you through your collaborations or through, other ways that you're getting in front of people's audiences. That's leading to sales. And that kind of engine is working well. And it might be working well on a small scale, but it's working well. So like people are picking up what you're putting down, and that's working over and over again. And you know how to bring people into your business, serve them, make money. And that machine is chugging along. And now you just need to amplify that. And so that's a time where using Facebook or Instagram ads can work, because you're going to be adding people to a machine that already works. The thing about Facebook and Instagram ads, one thing about it is that the traffic that comes in through those ads is going to convert at a lower rate than your organic traffic. So a much lower rate. So it's because the people who find you organically, they have some reason to trust you. They have like a little bit, like they're not just seeing an ad. They may be hearing about you from a podcast interview or from a friend, or even through Googling and finding you through, search engine optimization. Those things give them a little bit more likelihood to want to like stay on board with you and find out how you can help. When someone finds you through an ad, there's just a smaller percentage of those folks who are going to convert to being your client. So all of those reasons are why it's usually better for like an intermediate business to jump on with Facebook ads rather than at the very beginning.
and bummer because I don't, as I said, I have 0 eyeballs pretty much, and I'm just trying to get it going. And it was suggested to me, but I've really read and listened and definitely at best conflicting opinions. So it's kind of hard to think of spending the money, but I'm desperate to get things going.
Yes, I hear that. The place where I know it sounds trite, but like the place where your future clients is they are in other people's audiences right now. So the ways that you can get in front of those audiences, it's like if you think about it, somebody vouching for you and saying, I'd like you to present for my audience, like that already raises the trust level. So that's the fastest way I find to start building that list. And then Anna, you have your hand up.
The question I have is wanting to get your opinion on collaborating with other people. I heard a lot about people doing their own thing, and any feedback?
Do you mean like creating a program with other people?
Yes. If there's some shared interests with a friend, but then it's introducing a business relationship into a friendship. And I just don't know how that tends to go well or not.
I mean, it tends to go a lot of different ways. I have my own experience with this. Like one of my best friends and I ran a couples workshop together for a handful of years. And then we stopped because we had different goals and we're still super close friends. So that went well. And sometimes like when people do create your program together, sometimes a group of friends or a couple will go through it together to create a program together. And what I always recommend is make sure that I shouldn't say make sure. This is just my opinion. Like do the program together, but don't start the business together. So make it like a joint project where you and your friend each have your own business and you're doing a joint project with those two businesses. So it's super clear, like what you're each going to put in, what you're each going to get out, and that it's very easy to end it when either of you wants to end it or needs to end it, or it gets complicated and your businesses are still fully intact. And you can even agree ahead of time. And then each of our businesses were solid at the end and totally intact. Now, two of my close friends, Kelly and Miranda of Zinni their business is one. And, they have a beautiful business together. So it is absolutely possible. It's just very complicated. So I would always recommend starting small, starting with like one project. And then that can be great to have a co-facilitator, to have someone who like you can both promote it together. I think that's excellent.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for your feedback.
Yeah, thank you. And then we've got a question. Any magic tips as to how to build an email list? It's growing so slowly. So I found that my email list started growing faster when I had a freebie I felt really proud of and was announcing everywhere that had a very simple URL to name. So like rebeltherapist.me/mini, like it's just really easy to say. So whatever yours is, if you're really proud of it and you know that it helps the people who you want to work with, like your future participants with something that they care about now, and it's like high quality, then you're going to feel really proud stating it and sharing it everywhere. And then getting in front of other people's audiences as much as possible and sharing it in all of those situations. Those are good ways to build an email list. And then another is free events. Free events will tend to build your email list a little faster, or sometimes a lot faster than even like an evergreen or just always available freebie. So free events and sharing them with everybody, like inviting everybody, reminding everybody. And those can be hard at the beginning. If you have a small email list, those can be hard because even though you might get like an influx of, let's say, just like 10 new subscribers when you do a free event, that matters. Those 10 subscribers matter tremendously. And so be excited that they're there, like really serve your email list, whatever size it is. And the free event thing, I just want to acknowledge, can be hard because when you run a free event, if you have low participation or no participation, that can feel like a bummer. So just decide ahead of time that that actually isn't a bummer. That's just what every business goes through. And it's no big deal. It doesn't mean anything. It just means you're still growing. But that's the hesitation sometimes people have of running and offering free events for people to get on their email list, is that they're worried, well, then what if no one shows up? Well, then just join the club. That happens to everybody while you're growing. So those are 2, I would say, magic tips. All right. And then I'll answer one more before I go. How do I improve follow through on cool ideas when I'm preoccupied and then exhausted from working with a current caseload? Ooh. Well, I guess I'll just say how I do it these days. For me, it's like identifying which cool idea is most wanting to be birthed and really honoring it, and telling the other ones to wait so that I can attend to this one, and really asking it what it needs, like to happen and be birthed. And then with that one cool idea, bringing in support, telling the right people about it, like the people who are going to be like, cool, how can I help? Not the people who are going to be like, oh, why would that work? And then I need to give myself space to like build my creative energy. This is something that Thea Monnier talks about a lot, is your creative energy is going to come from giving yourself what you need. And it's going to come not from hustling and pushing. It's going to come from like spaciousness and nurturing yourself and giving yourself that like devotion and time. And then one more thing I see buried in that question is, it might not be for you, but for many people, there's something that needs to shift with that current caseload to make that experience less exhausting. There's something, whether it's your schedule or how you treat yourself before sessions or how you end sessions or something. For most folks in private practice, it's not your fault one bit. And like we can support, well, I'm not in private practice anymore, but we can support each other in finding like what are some boundaries or changes that will make that current caseload feel a little bit different. Susanna, anything you want to add to that?
I added in the chat. I was like, you can also, my experience was, that's why I'm on here now. Cause I'm like, I might actually start to have more room eventually for coming back to because I increased my fees. I shifted a whole bunch of stuff in my therapy practice. It's still sort of ongoing, but it's turning a corner where I'm like, oh, the space for creativity is opening up a little tiny bit right now. And I was scared to increase my fees, but when I did that, it allowed me to significantly reduce my caseload so that I could work on these other things to open up. And it's not easy, but it's helpful.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Thank you so much, everybody. I want to thank Cosmo Palms for editing this podcast. If you found this episode supportive, please share it with your favorite therapist or healer. That is absolutely how we reach more people. And thank you so much for listening. I'll see you next time.